In a world where carbs are your enemy, you need one man to help you fight your battles. That man is Jimmy.
Combating nutrition disinformation and general bull. It's Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com.
Switching to keto is too much of a change to how you eat now? Actually, many people who start consuming a low-carb, moderate-protein, high-fat ketogenic diet believe it will require a total overhaul of their diet. But not really. The main thing is to replace starchy sides like potatoes and rice with non-starchy and green leafy vegetables like cauliflower and kale. Add olive oil or avocado oil instead of dressing for your salad. Skip the bread and have hard cheese instead. Finally, for something sweet, enjoy a few squares of dark chocolate and a few blueberries for dessert. Find the keto foods you love and enjoy them. You're not really changing that much about how you eat now.
Simplified short-form keto videos found exclusively at ketowhiteboard.info. Watch it, share it, live it.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back to another Instagram Live, and we're here with another episode of Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website, and here's how you can take part in the show. We go live a couple of times a day, so go follow me on Instagram Live. I'm also simulcasting on Facebook Live, so go follow me live wherever you are. At Living Low Carb Man is how you can find me on all of these formats, and that's where I am on Instagram. I'm also there on Facebook. I'm also there on YouTube, so go look up Living Low Carb Man, LIVIN LOWCARBMAN. Once you're there, you can engage live in the content. But after you watch the live, you want to watch it on replay here on Facebook. You can watch it pretty much whenever you want to. And definitely share, you guys, if you find anything that I do here on Jimmy Rants interesting. Here on Instagram, you can watch it for 24 hours on replay. After 24 hours, it will disappear, and you'll need to go over to YouTube, type in a keyword Jimmy Rants. You will find the show, and that's where I have all of the past episodes coming up really fast, you guys, on 300 episodes. By early next week, we'll be at 300 episodes of Jimmy Rants. Pretty darn cool. Finally, we have the best of the best moments of this here show in podcast form. It's the Jimmy Rants podcast over on Apple Podcasts as well as Stitcher. All of these links, you guys, are at JimmyRants.com. Today's Jimmy Rants is all about this brand new column that I read here today off of CNN. What we aren't eating is killing us, according to a new global study. And they're making the argument, you guys, that yes, a lot of people are still eating a lot of foods that are not necessarily the most ideal for their health. But in addition to that, and maybe superseding that, they're also not eating enough of what they consider health foods. So what we're going to talk about here today is, are we eating too many unhealthy foods or not enough healthy ones? And of course, I'll tell you my position straight up front. I think it's both. I think we eat way too many unhealthy foods, which I define as pretty much anything that's refined, processed. Typically it's sugary, grainy, starchy, and also the vegetable oils. I don't want any keto people to neglect the negative impact that things like soybean oil and canola oil, those are highly processed oils as well. They are just as bad in your health as refined sugars and refined grains. So that would be the unhealthy things that I think we are eating too much of collectively as a society. But how about not enough healthy ones? Absolutely. I think there's a lot of great micronutrition that can come from real whole foods that people aren't eating. I think there's a lot of great nutrients that are found in things like red meat, especially when it's a properly humanely raised animal. grass-fed, grass-finished. When you eat nose to tail, which means all of the icky stuff on the inside of the animal, all of those things have great nutrients as well. So if you're just joining us, we're talking about this new study, a new global study. What we aren't eating is killing us, according to this new study. And so I'm asking the question, are we eating too many unhealthy foods or not enough healthy ones? And I'm making the case that it's both. But what did they define in this article as healthy food? That's going to be interesting. All right, you ready? Here we go. Which risk factor is responsible for more deaths around the world than any other? Is it not smoking? Or not smoking, not even high blood pressure. It's a poor diet. An assistant professor at the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation at the University of Washington, Ashkan Afshin, says in many countries, poor diet now causes more death than tobacco smoking and high blood pressure. So here's where we get into the article a bit. It's not just that people are choosing unhealthy options like red meat and sugary soda. So already they're off to a bad start. It's not just that people are choosing unhealthy options like red meat and sugary sodas. One of these things just doesn't belong here. Remember that game? Red meat and sugary sodas have nothing to do with each other. And I talk about this a lot on Jimmy Rants, you guys. They are trying their darndest to equate red meat with something unhealthy. Guys, red meat is a real whole food. And you guys know this. You watch me all the time. But the mainstream, they are just hell-bent on equating red meat with some really nasty, ungodly things that are in your diet, like sugary sodas. So they're saying a real whole food that God intended for us to consume in red meat is the exact same as a Coca-Cola that has 45 grams of high fructose corn syrup in it. Seriously, as they say, seriously? Yep, they're serious. Just as critical, the lead author of a 27-year global diet analysis, that's what we're looking at here, that was published on Wednesday in the journal The Lancet, he says, is the lack of health foods in our diet, along with high levels of salt. Well, number one, salt is not the enemy in your health. That has also been unfairly maligned, just like red meat, just like saturated fat. They want to say salt is having a negative impact on your health. No, it's not. Salt is a very critical, essential nutrient in your diet. And if you don't get enough salt, you start having issues. And I'm talking about that. And really, the only people that need to worry about high levels of salt are the salt sensitive, which is a very small number, very small percentage of the total population of people. So this notion of salt is just crazy. So the researcher Ashkan Afshin says, while traditionally all of the conversation about a healthy diet has been on lowering the intake of unhealthy food, in this study, we show that at the population level, a low intake of healthy foods is much more important rather than a high intake of the unhealthy food. Well, you can say potato, I can say potato. I think it's both. And anybody that denies the metabolic impact that unhealthy foods, which again, I define as refined grains, refined sugars, refined starches, vegetable oils, all of these things are causing so much more angst in our health that if you ate those with even more healthy foods, you're still not going to offset the good that would come from the healthy foods. And while I agree, it's more about the low intake of healthy foods. Here's the thing. When you eliminate the unhealthy foods and replace those with real whole foods that I would define as healthy, maybe they don't, but things like meat, eggs, cheese, real whole food-based fats like butter, avocado oil, coconut oil, all of those things are far healthier. So when you give up unhealthy foods, you replace them with health foods. So it doesn't have to be this either or proposition of, well, we're eating too few healthy foods and that's why we're unhealthy, much more so than a crappy diet. No, the crappy diet is the reason your health is going down. And if you replace the crappy diet with healthy foods, then you solve a lot of these issues they're talking about. 1 in 5 deaths globally, about 11 million people in 2017 occurred because, get this, you guys, this is what they claim: too much sodium, a lack of healthy whole grains, a lack of fruits and nuts and seeds, according to the study. All of that was the reason why those 11 million people died in 2017, was they ate too much salt, they didn't eat enough whole grains, they didn't eat enough fruit, and they didn't eat enough nuts and seeds. Rather than the diet that was packed with trans fat, sugar-sweetened drinks, and high levels of red and processed meats. Guys, this is just yet another example of what I've been talking about so much till I'm blue in the face lately. They think red meat is the same as processed foods, as sugary foods. It's crazy. But they didn't die because they got too much salt. They didn't die because they lacked whole grains. There is no nutritional requirement for you to have a single whole grain. I know I just made a bunch of dietitians faint. You're welcome. But you don't need whole grains. You don't need any grains at all. Grains are not an essential nutrient in the human diet. And yet they want to pretend like it is. Oh, they didn't eat enough whole grains. That's why they died. No, it didn't. A lack of fruit consumption. What is in fruit that you can't get in animal-based foods? I'm waiting. Oh yeah, that's right. There's nothing that's in fruit that's healthy for you that you can't get in an animal-based food. Now, maybe you have to eat some of the offal that's in animal-based foods to get some of the micronutrients that you get in fruit, but you get a ton of nutrition from animal-based foods. They never talk about that. And I'm going to keep talking about it because I think it's something that's not nearly known enough out there in the mainstream. People think nutrients, fruits and vegetables. They don't think nutrients, and the top 20 most nutrient-dense foods in the whole world are all animal-based foods. And if we get this out there, you guys, where people start thinking of red meat as having nutrients, then I think we'll start to stem this tide of this kind of nonsense getting out there. The large study size means these findings are relevant to everyone, no matter where they live. No, it doesn't. If you listened to my Livin' La Vida Low Carb Show podcast yesterday, I interviewed Dr. Richard Feynman. If you missed that episode, please do yourself a favor. Go to llvlc.com and go listen to Dr. Feynman and I have a great conversation all about this idea that a larger number in a study means that the findings are more relevant to everyone. He made the argument, you guys, that the larger the number that's in a study is actually the worse science. Why? Because there's so many confounding variables. Now, when it's a very large number, it's what's called an observational study, an epidemiological study, and those studies are only looking at data and not at actual numbers of people. Let's look at a randomized controlled clinical trial, and I know I've said this many times on Jimmy Rants, but again, I'm going to say it till I'm blue in the face. The only good science, especially when it comes to nutritional health, are the ones that are done in a controlled metabolic ward setting, randomized controlled, double-blind, placebo types of studies. The problem is those are very difficult studies to do because they're very expensive. You got to lock people away for a period of time in a metabolic ward, and most people are unwilling to do that unless you show them the money. So they rely on these big studies that are just data studies epidemiological studies where they're looking at a whole bunch of other studies that also could be epidemiological studies, smushing them all together and trying to come up with a conclusion. And what Dr. Feynman said on my interview with him is, you know, it really dilutes the data because there's so many confounding variables that you can't control for. So go listen to that when you're done watching me here today on Jimmy Rants, because it was truly eye-opening. But this Andrew Reynolds, he's a postdoctoral research fellow in New Zealand who was not involved in this study that we're talking about. But he said the large study size means findings are relevant to everyone. No, it does not. It means the findings are very spurious at best, and it means we need more good quality research, which is defined as randomized controlled trials. The findings of this paper will inform policy decisions that shape what food is available in Western countries, how it is marketed, and potentially what it's costing in the years to come. Guys, this is what's happening. So they're laying the groundwork. This kind of study, they're laying the groundwork. I just want you to be aware because it's coming. It's already been kind of hinted out there with the Eat Lancet study that came out earlier this year and some other things that are going on behind the scenes. They are laying the groundwork for when public policy decisions are made about what you as a consumer are allowed to buy, what they'll recommend to you as the consumer you need to be eating for healthy nutrition. They are going to try to make a move on eliminating salt and salt-based foods, red meat and processed meats. They're coming after the food supply that so many of us that eat keto rely on. And I know that sounds so sensationalistic to say it that way, but guys, it's right before our eyes. It's right in front of us right now, and they're not even trying to hide what they're doing anymore. Their stated purpose is to change policies about nutrition and how you should be feeding yourself. Now, whether they take it that next step beyond just giving recommendations and then suddenly mandate it, that will be a whole nother discussion for another day. But I wouldn't be surprised if that's their stated goal and their purpose in all of this. So in the analysis, which was paid for, get this guys, this study was paid for by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Do you know Bill Gates? Oh yeah, that Bill Gates, the multi-billionaire. He is funding vegan research with his billions of dollars. And so this is another one of those studies. And see, back when Dr. Atkins was still alive, he was funding some research. Oh, well, that research is just invalid because Dr. Atkins funded it. But nobody blinks an eye that Bill Gates funded this research. And it's research that supports his theories about nutrition. And it's research that actually will benefit him financially because he's invested in companies that make vegan meat alternatives. It's all connected, you guys. They looked at 15 dietary risk factors and their impact on death and disability, high levels of, quote, unhealthy red and processed meats. Why do they have to give a qualifier in front of red meat? Unhealthy? Says who? To who is it unhealthy? There is no randomized controlled trial that shows red meat alone, especially good quality grass-fed red meat, is unhealthy in any way, shape, form, or fashion. It's just not. But they want to make that claim. And of course, it's reinforced and the lie and the lie and the lie all the time. So when people read unhealthy red meat, oh yeah, okay, it's unhealthy. They don't bat an eye at it. Sugar-sweetened beverages, trans fats, and salt, all of these are known to be health risks. No, they aren't. Sugar-sweetened beverages, you bet your sweet pippy. Trans fatty acids, yeah. Salt, But red meat, not a chance. Healthy items include, here's the list of what's healthy. Fruit. It's iffy whether fruit is healthy or not. Vegetables. What kind of vegetables? Are we talking about non-starchy green leafy? I'm with you. Are we talking about starchy ones? And they found in a lot of surveys, people's idea of a vegetable is actually potatoes, which isn't a vegetable at all. It's a starch. And yet that's what they consider vegetables. Whole grains, that's the healthy food. Really? What health benefit do you get from consuming whole grains? Versus what health detriment do you get eating whole grains? Milk, they consider a healthy item. And I'm sure they're talking about fat-free and 2%, not whole milk. There's no way they're talking about whole milk, and definitely not raw milk. Calcium, which they call a healthy item, calcium. That's weird because calcium's not a food. Calcium is a nutrient in food. Are they talking about calcium supplements? What are they talking about? Nuts and seeds, fiber, legumes or beans. I'm getting gas just thinking about those. Omega-3 fatty acids from seafood and polyunsaturated fats. Of course, they're not talking about the ones that Christine talks about all the time, the omega-6s that are done the right way. They're talking about vegetable oils. They're talking about canola oil and soybean oil and corn oil and all these oils that you see in these clear plastic bottles on the store shelves. That's what they're referring to. And those are all, you guys, supposedly the most healthy foods for you to be consuming. And they're making the case in this study that people aren't eating enough of those things, so therefore that's why they're dying. Not the unhealthy foods that they are eating. And good for you fats that are found in salmon, vegetable oils, and nuts and seeds. So there it is. They even call vegetable oils good for you. Vegetable oils are anything but good for you. If you still eat traditional mayonnaise on your ketogenic diet that is sold in grocery stores that has soybean oil or canola oil, even if it says expeller pressed, it's going to expeller press the inflammation out of you, because it's going to raise your inflammation levels probably better than just about anything except for carbohydrates. Except for salt, which is a key risk factor in a lot of countries, the study found that red and processed meats, trans fats, and sugary drinks toward the bottom of the risk chart for most countries. So they're saying it's not the unhealthy foods that they're consuming, like the very dangerously unhealthy red and processed meats, trans fats, and sugary drinks. It's the lack of things like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, milk, calcium, nuts and seeds, fiber, legumes, beans, salmon, vegetable oils, and the like. Do you guys buy that? Are we eating too many unhealthy foods or not enough healthy ones? I do think it's a mix of both, but when you give up the unhealthy foods, you replace it with healthy foods. Why is this a problem? I'm not getting what the purpose of this study is other than vegan propaganda. More than half of all global diet-related deaths in 2017 were due to 3 risk factors. I don't know how they parsed this out, that it was down to these 3, but listen to this. Eating too much salt. Do you know anybody that died from eating too much salt? Yeah, me neither. They die from the complications related in their health that they're claiming happened as a result of too much salt. But high blood pressure, which is the scare tactic they get to have people reduce the amount of sodium they consume in their diet, high blood pressure is the disease, not salt consumption. So why would they say that eating too much salt is the risk factor? No, the risk factor is whatever you did to raise your blood pressure that could have led to that. Not enough whole grains was the next factor that they said raised global diet-related deaths in 2017. Not enough whole grains? Once again, tell me, please, please, please tell me, biochemically, what requirement does the human body have for whole grains? Anyone? I'm waiting. Oh yeah, that's right. There is no nutritional requirement for whole grains. And yet they want to keep repeating that. And again, how do they quantify that it's whole grain consumption that led to some of these deaths? They're pulling this crap out of their butt. Here you go. Whole grains. Yeah, that's got to be one. Too much salt. Yeah, that's another. And then the third one, you guys, not enough fruit. So they narrow it down to too much salt, not enough whole grains, not enough fruit. What about vegetables? Aren't vegetables much more nutrient dense than fruit? Every single fruit, save for avocado and olives, those are also fruits, put them out of the equation. Every other fruit that's out there has sugar in it, has fructose in it. And so it might come with some nutrition in it, but it's also packed with a whole lot of stuff that can impact you if you already have some metabolic damage going on. But they want to pretend like deaths are happening because people didn't eat enough fruit. If everyone watching me on Jimmy Rants here today went out and you backed off on the amount of salt you ate more whole grains, you ate more fruit, you ate more vegetable oils and seafood and beans and legumes and nuts and seeds and milk, would you be healthier today eating a diet like that, devoid of meat, both red meat and processed meat, sugary sweetened beverages and trans fatty acids and salt? Would you be better off with your diet? Would your health be vastly better if you eliminated those bad foods, but more importantly, added in things like less salt, more whole grains, and more fruit? Would you be better? I would argue that most of us, which there's a statistic that's out there, the number of people that deal with at least some level of insulin resistance is somewhere between 75 to 85% of the population. So that's the vast majority of people can't handle extra sugar even from natural sources like fruit. You can't handle whole grains. Well, number one, they don't really sell whole grains. They sell processed breads and processed pastas and other food like disease agents that they pass off as whole grain, contains 9 essential whole grains. There is no essential whole grain. If you ate that kind of food, your blood sugar would go way up. Your insulin levels would go way up. Your inflammation levels would go way up. You would pack on pounds. You would not feel well. You would have gut distress. There would be so many bad ramifications to eating the way that they're trying to describe in this study, that if we simply ate healthier, in their eyes, whole grains, less salt, and more fruit, healthier foods, then you're more apt to not die early because of that. And I don't know about you, but all the bloat, I'm feeling bloated just thinking about eating more whole grains, more fruit, less meat, less fat, less salt, more legumes and beans, more seafood, and what they call good for you fats found in salmon, vegetable oils, and nuts and seeds. Some of that's healthy. Some of that I would eat on a ketogenic diet, but a lot of that stuff would make me less healthy, not more healthy. More than half of all the global related deaths in 2017 were down to those 3 risk factors. That's just amazing to me that they lied. Let's just say what it is. It's a flat out lie. The new study is part of this yearly Global Burden of Disease report. How lovely is that? Global Burden of Disease. Who gets to decide what the burden is? Who gets to decide what caused any said disease? How do we know? Did they feed them just whole grains for a period of time? Did they feed them just red meat for a period of time? How do they parse out all of these things and make them either a causal or non-causal factor in why people died or didn't die? Why people got worse health or better health? How do they know what it was that gave them that effect? This was prepared by a consortium of thousands of researchers that track premature death and disability from more than 350 diseases and injuries in 195 countries. The fact that it has that many people involved is yet another reason why this is not good science. This is extremely bad science. This is exactly why people are so confused about what they're supposed to do, because they look at oh wow, this humongous study, when they don't realize they're not actually looking at people, they're looking at data. And it's that data that's not really giving them the whole picture. In January, this consortium released its Diet for a Healthy Planet. There's another code for veganism. Diet for a Healthy Planet, because they seem to think red meat is causing greenhouse gases that's going to destroy the planet and lead to global warming. And they hit all the triggers, you guys. All of these people that believe this nonsense, they buy into this hook, line, and sinker. And so the Diet for a Healthy Planet, which said cut your red meat and sugar consumption, we need to make the goal to cut it in half and up your intake of fruits, vegetables, and nuts. That will prevent 11.6 million premature deaths without ever harming the planet in the process. So the lead researcher of this said an overview of the current study, but few of the details was in last year's Global Burden of Disease report, making this year's version the most comprehensive analysis on the health effects of diet that's ever been conducted. It did no such thing. What it did was you had a preconceived bias on what you thought a healthy diet was, vegan, and you shaped and shifted this into what you wanted it to say. That's what this report did. It didn't really provide any comprehensive analysis on the health effects of diet ever conducted. No, it didn't. And then they said, despite methodological flaws, easy for me to say, and gaps in data from countries. So in other words, they're even admitting the data is already skewed. The data's incomplete. The data didn't really give you a lot of good, solid science. And that's my point here on this Jimmy Rants today is, why are we making a big deal about this study when even they admit the flaws and the bias that's involved? Studies are published every year on how we eat. The amount of data considered and the global representativeness make this study worth having attention. No, it doesn't. The study didn't look at randomized controlled trials. Now, here is an observational / group study that I would be all about. If they wanted to take a look at an epidemiological study that only looked at RCTs, randomized controlled trials, if they did an epidemiological study of, say, 10 different studies, and all of those 10 studies were randomized controlled clinical trials that were done well, and you wanted to extrapolate information from those RCTs, okay, that is an epidemiological study that I could buy into. The problem is most epidemiological studies, they take this epidemiological study, this epidemiological study, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, smush all of those together, and whatever conclusions those epidemiologists did then now get smushed together to further dilute that data. So you're not really learning anything good or new. What you're doing is you're creating a hypothesis, but you're not doing good science. You're just not. He said the risk rankings provide public policymakers with invaluable information on what dietary behaviors to target first. And there it is, you guys. The 2020 dietary guidelines are coming next year, and I got a whole lot of rants coming all about that group. It's coming, you guys, brand new recommendations. And guys, whether you like it or not, as the American dietary guidelines go, so goes the entire world. They all tend to follow in the footsteps of what the Americans do when it comes to dietary guidelines. And if they make this claim, red meat and sugar are basically the same, then guess what? They're going to put restrictions in the 2020 dietary guidelines that will say, don't eat red meat, don't eat sugar, don't eat blah, 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 blah. And of course, people say, well, they just ignore that. But again, we've talked about that before. It has ripple effects all throughout our culture and quite frankly, around the world. So those of you watching Jimmy Rants or listening to this on the Jimmy Rants podcast around the world, don't think this doesn't affect you there in South Africa. Don't think this doesn't affect you in Great Britain. This doesn't affect you in Australia or New Zealand. It's happening around the world, and America is taking the lead. We're already seeing it in Canada. All you Canadians, you know, your new dietary guidelines are very discouraging of people eating red meat. It's happening, you guys. 10 million diet-related deaths in 2017 were from cardiovascular disease. Cancer was responsible for 913,000 deaths. Type 2 diabetes accounted for 339,000. In addition, 66% of disabilities in 2017 came from a range of chronic diseases due to the three factors we talked about earlier: too much salt, not enough fruit, not enough whole grains. Interestingly, obesity was not a top-tier contributor. It came in sixth place of the list of global disease risks. Now, isn't that interesting? Because every time I go online and I'm looking up things and people are making comments, they always like to bring in the obesity of people and that obesity alone is a disease. In my opinion, obesity is not a disease. Obesity is a symptom of other diseases, things like insulin resistance, that's a disease. Things like type 2 diabetes, that's a disease. Other issues are involved, but obesity alone is not a disease. And there was this great move at some of these obesity conferences that I went to several years ago, where they were trying to make the move of calling obesity a disease. Now, I understood why these medical doctors did that. They were in the medical weight loss world, and they wanted a code that they could put in there to help insurance pay for weight loss methodologies. But let's face it, obesity is not a disease. It's a side effect of other disease states. But number 6 in all of these things as a risk factor globally, if you listen to most of the mainstream media, they would say that obesity is the problem with disease. We cut people's weight, we improve their health. That's what they've always told us. But they're showing us right here in this study, this vegan study, that it's not the obesity. It's all these other things: cardiovascular disease, cancer, type 2 diabetes. What diet do we know helps with all of those things, either as a preventative measure or as a therapy once you have it? Yeah, it's keto. I'm not talking about that. Can't have that red meat. It's a vegan study after all. Uzbekistan had the highest number of diet-related deaths, followed by Afghanistan, the Marshall Islands, Papua New Guinea, and Vanuatu. Israel had the lowest number, followed by France, Spain, Japan, and Andorra. And the amount of sodium, oh, here it is. In terms of the lowest death risk, the UK ranked 23rd, above Ireland at 24th, Sweden at 25th. The United States was ranked 43rd after Rwanda and Nigeria. India ranked 118th. China was 140th. So for the United States, India, Brazil, Pakistan, Nigeria, Russia, Egypt, Germany, Iran, and Turkey, they found that it was the lack of whole grains that was the greatest risk factor in why people die early. I don't believe it. The lack of whole grains. What did hunter-gatherer men and women do when there were no whole grains? What did we do as a society? How, pray tell, did we survive as a human race without, quote, healthy whole grains around? Agriculture's only been around about 10 to 12,000 years. What did they do before that? And if this is such an essential part of our diet, how in the world are all of us here today? Anybody ever asked that question? Whole grains haven't always been here. So how did we survive? Could it be, possibly, that you don't really need whole grains? For many countries, lack of whole grains came in second or third. That doesn't mean people in these countries ate no grains, but rather that they ate processed grains, which have little nutritional value and the potential for high calorie counts. The guy that published a study in The Lancet on the effects of whole grains earlier this year cautioned many products that are sold to consumers today as whole grain often are not. Whole grains are being included in ultra-processed products that may be finely milled. and have added sodium, sugars, and saturated fats. I think we all need to be aware of this, not confuse the benefit from the intact, minimally processed whole grains with what is often advertised as whole grain products available today. Well, Mr. Reynolds, the problem is when people go to the grocery store and they see a bread that says whole grain bread, what are they going to do? They're going to assume that that's whole grains. So, guys, this is a red herring. They want it both ways. They want to pretend like you, as a consumer who's trying to eat healthier for your body, they want you to believe that you need to eat more whole grains. Then you faithfully go down to the grocery store and you pick up this, oh, it's whole grain wheat bread. And you take it home and you eat it. And then they go, whoa, 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 whoa. That's not what we're talking about. That's highly ultra processed stuff. We're not talking about that. That's going to kill you. Why would you eat that? What's a consumer supposed to do? How is the consumer supposed to know what the quote right whole grain is versus the one that's going to harm you? They don't. And I would argue most of the foods that are on store shelves that are sold as whole grains are extraordinarily highly processed. You can't buy a whole grain product in a grocery store. It's almost impossible. About the closest you could come is if you got like a bagel, and on top of the bagel they had various little grains and things right there. But even that, the bagel itself is highly processed. So how do you get whole grains into your body, which is what they want us to do so that we don't die early? Does this make any sense at all, you guys? A whole grain is defined as the use of the entire seed of a plant. The brand, the germ, the endosperm. The Whole Grain Council provides a stamp in 54 countries consumers can look for that certifies the degree of whole grains in the product. I guarantee you a lot of those products that have that stamp on it still have processed grains in them. You can't really find whole grains. Number one, if you only ate whole grains without them being at least a little bit processed, you would break your teeth. That's how hard they are. That's how inhumanly edible they are. They're not meant for human consumption. Grains will rip your teeth apart if you ate them in their truly whole form. So to me, rather than getting caught up in this whole nonsense of you need to add in more whole grains, why don't you cut out all grains? Whether they're whole or processed or whatever, replace those with good, truly healthy foods. They want to talk about in this article how it's not the inclusion of unhealthy foods, but the exclusion of healthy foods. I think they are promoting extremely unhealthy advice by telling people to get red meat out of their diet, get good, solid, real food-based fats out of their diet. None of that to me is good for you. You want to add those things back in, not take them out. The greatest risk factor for China, Japan, Indonesia, and Thailand was the excessive amount of salt. This is probably due to the extremely salty rice vinegars, sauces, and pastes that are used to cook traditional Asian foods. Salty foods like soy sauce eaten with sushi contribute to high sodium levels in Asian diets. So, does this mean those cultures are going to continue to live with this high risk? Not necessarily, according to Corina Hawkes from the Center for Food Policy at the University of London. Anyone who studies the history of food will tell you cultural preferences will change over time. They do shift. Yes, it will likely involve having a cultural change. So they're trying to change that you can't have Asian food unless you take the salt out. There's a reason they put that salt into that food, you guys. And I would think if it was this great health risk that we would see a lowering of the population in Asian cultures. But we don't see that at all. We see a population explosion. And it wasn't until recently, in the past few years, that we're seeing a rise in diabetes and heart disease and some other westernized type of chronic health issues pop up. Well, the reason for that is they started adding in westernized kind of processed crap, not adding in red meat, as they claim in this study, not the lack of whole grains. It's crazy, the conclusions they've made. In Mexico, it's the lack of nuts and seeds being the highest risk factor, followed by a lack of vegetables, whole grains, and fruit in the diet. It was one of the few countries where unhealthy sugary beverages ranked quite high, number 5. Yeah, we've been to Mexico on the low-carb cruise many times. And yeah, Coca-Cola is everywhere there. They have big signs and artwork and everything all about the sugary soda. So that's probably a huge contributing factor. Much more so than the lack of whole grains and lack of vegetables and fruit and all that. That's not only due to a cultural preference for soda and homemade sugary drinks called aguas frescas, but a lack of access to clean water and even fruit and vegetables. There's no clean water to drink, so people have to buy clean water to drink, and if they're going to have to buy it, they would much rather drink soda than water. It's also easier to get processed food than fresh fruits and vegetables. I wonder if they implemented some kind of project where they would encourage and offer incentives for people to own their own chickens, for people to dig a well, for example, for people to grow their own gardens. I wonder if they offered some kind of like tax break incentive, if they could get people to consume more fresh fruits and vegetables that way. Homemade drinks there also contribute to the overuse of sugar in Mexico. Getting back to whole grains, for example, is going to require a complete change in the economics of food production and distribution. I hope they don't start trying to grow whole grains in Mexico. That's not the answer to their issues. It's just not. Refining grains is highly profitable. Take corn, for example. You refine it into 3 ingredients: animal feed, refined flours, and high fructose corn syrup. So manufacturers generate multiple value streams from this refining process, and that's why they do it, you guys. They can throw all kinds of health claims on, oh, made from healthy whole grains, and it could be this really refinedness. And of course, high fructose corn syrup is the major sugar consumed in a lot of sugary beverages these days. Thankfully, that is on the decline and people are buying less and less of it, but it's still an issue for a lot of people. If we then say I'm producing corn to make a product, then we need to have dialogues with the industry to ask where public investment is needed, how we shift this system, because it's going to be a big deal, a big shift. They're all hopeful. 20 years ago, when she entered a room of global health policymakers and mentioned the importance of diet, she was seen as sort of a fringe person. Now, when I enter a room and say that, it's taken seriously. Well, the problem with this is you're being taken seriously, you're a vegan propagandist, and you're really not giving people the whole picture. Because if you came in late, this whole study that I've been reading about, what we aren't eating is killing us, according to a new global study, they think we're eating too much red meat and sugar and trans fats and all that and salt, and thinking those are the enemies in the health, but they say we're not eating enough of whole grains, fruits, vegetables, vegetable oils, and that kind of thing. And I'm saying their definition of what they think is healthy is skewed from what you and I would think is healthy. And so are we eating too many unhealthy foods? Absolutely we are, as a collective society. Now, most of us, no, we're not. We've gotten rid of those from our diet many moons ago. And again, it's refined grains, refined sugars, refined starches, and vegetable oils. Those are the worst of the worst of the worst of the worst unhealthy foods. Or are we not eating enough healthy ones, which I would define as green leafy and non-starchy vegetables, healthy fats like avocados and coconut oil and butter, and olive oil, red meat from humanely raised, grass-fed, grass-finished animals, pastured pork, tallow, bone broth. Down the line we go with all the real whole foods that come from animals. And if we do all those things, you guys, then we're going to be healthy. But again, they're discounting that in this new study, and I definitely wanted to bring it to you here today on Jimmy Rants. All right, let's see what you guys have to say. I'll be to you here in a minute, Facebook Live, but let's go to Instagram Live first. Welcome in, you guys. I watch and share daily. Love the messages that you share. Thank you, Kimberly. I appreciate that. I was waiting for my daily dose of Jimmy Rants. I'm usually prepared, says Angels. Yeah, I had some things go on this morning that I had to take care of. That's why I was a little bit late getting started. CNN, my favorite news source, says Kimberly. I saw that last night. So glad you're addressing it. AK Bonbon, thank you. What up, AD Keto? I've been using EAAAY, too much gas in my car. I'll try rubbing alcohol next time, or sugar water. Just one time won't hurt, right? That's funny. Funny, Brittany. Oops. Sorry, guys. It likes to jump on me like that. All right, there we go. Where is the salt bashing coming from? Is it people who have high blood pressure? LAL Myres, it's always been lumped in the same fashion that saturated fat has, salt consumption has. And yeah, it's these very, very salt sensitive people that need to worry about it. But that's literally like at best 3 to 5% of the population. Most people do not have a problem with too much salt. I would argue most people don't eat enough salt. And when I say salt, I'm not talking about the Morton's fake sodium chloride salt. I'm talking about real salt, pink Himalayan sea salt, maybe Redmond's real salt. Look these up, you guys, because they're far healthier for you than they want you to know. Perhaps sodium they're referring to has too much processing in dextrose. Maybe, Beth, but they just say salt and sodium, not any specific kind. It's kind of like what they do with red meat. They say red meat and processed meats, but they don't ever talk about grass-fed animals. They can't, because if they bring up the grass-fedness of animals, then they have to admit that there's some red meat that's good. Their brains won't let them go there. We're made of red meat, says Alberto. Do we need to stick an FDA label on our butt? Warning, human carcinogenic walking. Carcinogenic walking. I love it. I'm still working on my high blood pressure while I have long ago quit. While I have I think you meant while I have lost quite a bit of weight, my body is holding on to the high blood pressure. I do eat pink Himalayan sea salt with every meal. That's awesome. I just listened to your podcast with Dr. Feynman, says the bacon experiment. Hey, Dan, glad you keep addressing the bad science. Every day I will address it here on Jimmy Rants because we see it every single day, and today's Jimmy Rants is no exception. Bacon experiment also says fruit is not healthy at all. For a lot of people, it's not. It's simply not. Whole grains and diabetes must be good things now, according to Dan. Yeah, they definitely want people to be more diabetic, not less. Alberto said, grains, do they know how much stuff people have to do to deactivate the anti-nutrients before eating them? Soaking, cooking, rituals, and prayers. Yeah, that's the thing. Whole grains in and of themselves, you don't want to be consuming whole grains. There's so much inflammatory properties of eating whole grains, and like you mentioned, Alberto, the anti-nutrients that are in it. And I don't think we talk about anti-nutrients. We talk about nutrients a lot, and you want to get more nutrition and nutrient-dense foods into your diet. But there are actually foods like whole grains that actually will pull nutrients out of your body, and that's no bueno for you. And so, yeah, the anti-nutrients, they have to deal with it. Ashton says it's a three-prong attack by Big Pharma, Big Food, and the vegan community. They're all scared of losing big bucks from people getting healthier. Yep. I wish you could do a study, says Bonnie, then it would be proper and the truth. Well, the problem is they don't need a layperson like me. I have no scientific background or anything like that. I'm just an educated layperson. But it's sad that an educated layperson can see all of this stuff going on, and the wizards of smart in the science world can't figure this out for themselves. Come on! They're being derelict in their duty. Another form of censorship if we continue to allow it, says Ashton. Could be. Whole grains in, whole grains out, says Alberto. Most whole grains are indigestible. That's right, Alberto. It's amazing to me, says Amy, how unhealthy the healthy foods on the market actually are. Yeah, maybe I'd do a whole Jimmy Rants on all of the foods people think are healthy that actually aren't. Thank you for all you do. I find myself turning into you more and more for rebuttals, for health grabbing clickbait. Yeah, I've got a ton of them, you guys, just waiting to be ranted about. I only do 2 a day, and so I don't have enough time. But what's funny is I'll wake up in the morning and sometimes I'll see another new one. I go, well, I can't not talk about, like this one today I talked about. I just found this today. It just came out last night. So I have to stay on the cutting edge. If we can get to the others, fine. But the news cycle has been such lately that I have to address these. All right, let me come over to Facebook Live. Thank you guys for being patient while I was going over all the Instagram comments. Wow, a ton of comments here. Scrolling all the way back to the top. All right, hello, hello. Thanks for being here, guys. My group just finished a 36-hour fast, says Nancy. Awesome. That's really, really good. Bam, red meat gets thrown under the bus, says Nancy. They always do that, Nancy. You know this by now. I effing love my red meat. Bring it, says Brenda. Don't blame ancient food to modern disease. Exactly. For modern disease. Beef is the best food you can eat. Brenda, I don't disagree with you. I get more enjoyment with my keto carnivore from when I have beef. Now, yesterday was a very busy day. I didn't get to have beef, so around 6:30 last night, I cooked up about 7 of my chicken eggs, cooked in some grass-fed butter. And that was pretty much the majority of my sustenance. Yesterday, I had a little bit more than that. So, yeah. Salt is also effing good, says Brenda. I think you're having an effing good time here on Jimmy Rants today. I heard you're going on a sabbatical. Of course I am, Mark. September 1st through February the 29th. I will be gone like Donkey Kong. Okay, that didn't rhyme, but you know what I mean. Definitely, it's both. Their definition of healthy is so far off from what is truly healthy, they're actually hurting people with these reports. And the problem, Nancy, is they are hurting people, trying to tell people that they're not eating enough of the healthy foods. And I think this is stemmed from people aren't eating as many whole grains now. We can't have that. We need them to be eating grains. And I would not be surprised if we see this reinforced by the USDA, United States Department of Agriculture, in their new dietary guidelines next year. This is all laying the groundwork, you guys. Don't think that articles and so-called studies like this have no meaning at all. Don't think they're coincidental. They are coming out when they're coming out because they have to try to shape public policy. Healthy user bias, says Larry, plus very low hazard ratios. Exactly. Thanks for informing. You bet, Larry, and thanks for being here on Jimmy Rants. I can tell the study in my own body, keto does make me feel better. I like these findings and plan to continue to work at changing my keto lifestyle. And that's the thing, Sue. N equals 1. How do you feel with what you're doing? And if you feel better eating all red meat and doing a carnivore type of diet, why would anybody discourage you from that? That's the thing that always gets me. Their purpose is to keep everyone sick and dependent. Well, if I have anything to say about it, and I do, that ain't gonna happen. Ashley says, I didn't get to be 400 pounds by eating healthy fruit and whole grain. Now down to 293 eating meat and fat. I feel amazing. No one's going to change my mind. Well, good job to you, Ashley. Keep up the great work and keep doing what works for you. Beans have never been my friend, says Kelly. Yeah, most people have a problem with beans. I was dying because I ate all that crap, says Ashley. Yeah. Wow, you guys are hilarious with some of your comments. Jana says, I'm going to have to start raising some beef. Yeah, Jana, I would love to have a cow on my property. I have 25 backyard chickens and multiple gardens on my property. But yeah, I would love to have a cow. The problem is we live in a city area, so I don't think they'll allow that. Consumers need to read and educate themselves. Debbie, and That's one reason I started Jimmy Rants, is I didn't think people necessarily read everything. All right, I'm running out of time on Instagram, so I need to finish this up. How about some Jimmy Rants live spur of the moment interview type things during KetoCon? Just an idea. Oh, during KetoCon, I'm for sure going to do that, Candy. All right, guys, I did run out of time. Just finished my rice cauliflower oatmeal. Yum, no grains in sight, says Louise. So, guys, the bottom line in this Jimmy Rants, are we eating too many unhealthy foods or not enough healthy ones? And I think it's both. I think we're eating too much crap as a society. And if you give up the crap and you replace it with real whole food-based food products, things like red meat, things like eggs, butter, coconut oil, all of those things are really, really healthy for you. And so when you see this kind of stuff, you guys, remind people that it was paid for by Bill Gates and his foundation. He's a very well-known radical vegan who's putting his billions of dollars at stake here, all on this vegan message. And I think we need to know when we're being propagandized, and that's exactly what's happening. That's it for this episode of Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. And if you like the show, go follow me live on Instagram or on Facebook. We go live a couple times a day. I'm at Living Low Carb Man, LIVIN LOWCARBMAN. Once you're there, you can actually engage live, just like all you guys did here today. Thanks for being here. If you missed the live on Instagram, you can watch it on replay for up to 24 hours. It stays on Facebook. If you missed the replay, you can watch it on YouTube. So go check it out. Type in a keyword Jimmy Rants on YouTube. You'll find the show. Finally, we had the best of the best moments of this here show in podcast form. It's the Jimmy Rants podcast on Stitcher as well as Apple Podcast. All of these links, you guys, are at jimmyrants.com. Instagram Live, 3 seconds. See you next time.